So you've had trouble getting somebody out of the house that you own, your investment property or your real property, and they said they're not leaving. Well, guess what? There is a new law that only says you can kick them out of your house, but they may be arrested. I'm Shelia Smoot. The Shelia Smoot Show starts right now. I'm Shelia Smoot. Welcome in the Shelia Smoot Show. Good to have you along on this great day. Every day is a great day if you wake up and you're smiling and you're breathing. You're breathing. We know what that feels like because I like to, everybody breathe. Because it's been a long day for me and it's already started. It started yesterday. So I've had to settle down and sit down. But guess what? I got some really good information for you this morning, and it's going to be a really good time. You better bring out your pen and pencil. Back in the day, that's what they used to say. Or pick up your phone and take notes like I do, because this segment is really going to knock your socks off. If you're doing anything in real estate, if you're talking about real estate, if you're investing, if you own, or if this is your primary home, we got some news for you. Laws are changing, and one of them happens to do with people invading your space. And we're going to talk to attorney Greg Stanley from Stanley & Associates, who is our guru on all things property when it comes to your rights. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm just squatting over here waiting on you.
You know that's good, because you're just squatting there and just taking over space, right? And you don't think you think I got to take you to court, go through all that rigmarole to kick you out. Well, guess what, Greg? You said that the laws have changed, and it has to do with squatters in a place. What is a squatter, Greg, in your opinion? What is a squatter?
That's a great question, Sheila. So for those of you who read my articles online, just coincidentally, back on about the 21st of last month, I posted an article, and it was about squatters in Alabama. And in the article, I was talking about how I think Florida has the best squatter laws, And the reason is because squatters are people that occupy property against the will of the owner of the property. So they don't have any right to be there. They don't have a lease or some claim to own the property. They're just squatters. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes people think of squatters as homeless people. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes homeless people are squatters. But also sometimes it's people who will actually move into the property and turn on the power. And they'll go to the Alabama Power with a fake lease that they made up themselves. What? And they'll turn the power on and they'll turn the water on. And then they openly claim to own the property and that you can't kick them out. And I'm here to tell you, in Florida, that doesn't stand. But in Alabama, after the 1st of June, it won't stand here either.
Wow. And that's June of 2024. For those of you who are listening to this show at this hour, that would be June of 2024. The laws have changed and will change and at this airing of this show. But, Greg, squatters have traditionally said, and I remember this movie, I think it was called Pacific Heights. It was out of San Diego. It was, wasn't it? And the guy moved in, and he was like, nah, I'm in your house. You can't do anything. And I think the guy stayed and damaged the house and stayed forever. And, like, he was there for, over a year or so. They couldn't get rid of him. He was a squatter, took over a beautiful home in this movie in San Diego. And it was like a nightmare. And I know when people go into their houses, especially those who've bought houses and they leased them or whatever the case may be, and they decided not to pay rent. That happened a lot in COVID. They're like, well, you can't kick me out. But not so. Talk to me about it.
Now, let's keep in mind, we need to be clear that in Alabama, a squatter is a person that never had a right to be there. So, for example, a holdover tenant, that's not a squatter.
Okay.
That's a holdover tenant. They had a right to be there, and they just stayed. That's different. That's not really the same thing as a squatter. A squatter is a person who has no right to be there, and they just came in and set up shop. Either they put a blanket in the basement and got a camp heater, or they went down to the Alabama Power with a fake lease and they moved in. And either one of those are called squatters. Now, there's one thing I want to be clear about, though. People talk about squatters' rights.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the good news is in Alabama, squatters' rights never existed. As far as the idea of I'm going to own your property because I squatted on your property for 10 years or 20 years or, whatever the period of time that they were trying to claim was. And that they've never really had that right in Alabama. Mm-hmm. And the reason is very clear. In Alabama, if you want to claim ownership of that property through squatters' rights, and for the lawyers who are listening, they know what I'm saying is adverse possession. Mm-hmm. That's when you take over the property and you hold it adverse to the rest of the world. You don't let the owner come on the property kind of thing. Well, in Alabama, even if you do that, it doesn't help you as far as getting title to the property unless you also went down to the courthouse and somehow convinced them to assess the property into your name, and you paid taxes for the last 10 or 20 years, depending on which law you're trying to use. So just moving in, taking over, and saying, well, I own this now, that's not going to get you title to the property unless you're able to also go down to the courthouse, get it assessed into your name, and then you pay the taxes.
Greg, assessment. What is an assessment of property?
Thank you for asking that.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate reminding me that some of these words that
they're great words. I mean, I've had to learn over the years too. But assessment and so, folks, for those of you who don't know, you do have in your county of record a tax collector and a tax assessor. Let's start with who is the tax assessor before we get back to that squatter piece, because that's involving your rights to get the property taken over in a weird way.
Right. And I'd like to give you a quick story. We're kind of drifting away from squatters, but I want to give you a quick story about squatters' rights and a person who was trying to claim a property using squatters' rights, or what we call adverse possession. And he assessed the property, and that was the question you asked. Assessing is when you go to the courthouse and you show the tax assessor's clerk some sort of deed or conveyance that convinces them that you own the property now. Mm-hmm. So it is assessed into your name. Now, there are some people out there that think that means you own it. It does not. Okay. Having it assessed name is not an ownership record in any way. It doesn't stand up in any court whatsoever. And the reason is, especially in Jefferson County, up until about 7 or 8 years ago, you could go into the courthouse and say, well, Mima died. Mm-hmm. So could you assess it into my name now, and here's her death certificate? And they would assess the property in somebody else's name. Mm-hmm. But there was no deed. So even though they had it assessed in their name, there was no deed. Wow. So they didn't own it. They thought they owned it, maybe, but they didn't. So assessment strictly means that the tax assessor has your name listed as the owner of the property. But that's not the same thing as having a deed mm-hmm. in the probate record, in the probate land records. That's the ownership. That is chain of title, is the probate record. When we go to court and we go to prove title on a piece of property, like an heirship piece of property or something like that, mm-hmm. we don't even refer to the assessment record. That's not even a thing. We refer to the deeds that have been recorded. Sheila, if you'll indulge me, I know it's early morning and mm-hmm. everybody's trying to get their coffee right now, but I have
Good stuff.
I have a story I want to share about this.
Okay, go. I'm interested because this is interesting to me.
Well, I was involved in a case, and a fella was trying to quiet the title into his name. In other words, he didn't own it, but he was trying to claim squatters' rights. And he was trying to say, I have owned this property for 10 years, and it's been assessed in my name for 10 years, and I paid the taxes for 10 years. So he was saying that he had done all these things mm-hmm. for 10 years, and that he had recorded something which made it so that, it looked like he owned the property for 10 years. Well, here's the thing. About 10 years ago, he did go and have it assessed into his name, except for it wasn't really his name. He had it assessed into the name of, and I'll use my name, into Greg Stanley, agent for the heirs of, and I'll make up a name here, Gracie King.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gracie King was the former owner. So he said, look, it's been assessed in my name for the last 10 years. Well, no, the judge said, no, it's not assessed in your name. It's assessed in the name of the agent for the heirs of Gracie King.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it happened to be that, but that's not you. You could in fact quiet the title into the name of agent of the heirs, except for the agent of the heirs can't adversely possess against the other heirs. So you're out of luck. You didn't do it, even though you assessed it into the name of the agent of the heirs. That was his downfall. And the judge said, you don't own that property. The heirs own that property. And so that's what the judge said. And we convinced the other guy, we convinced the people on the other side that what they need to do is go to probate. Mm-hmm. And, I know that when people hear probate, they think bad. They think, oh, that's bad. Well,
yeah, I typically do, but it can be good if it's in a situation you have your lawyer with you. Well, we want to have our lawyer with you, right?
Yeah, if somebody says, well, you're going to need to probate this estate, it doesn't mean you're locked out of the estate.
Mm-hmm.
It means that the court is going to be doing some things for about 6 months. In the meantime, you're still living in the house and doing all the same things you were doing before. It's just that the process is going through probate, through the probate court, to make it so that the title is yours.
And so that process is interesting too in itself. But going back to what you said earlier about assessment, the heirs got it, the judge ruled, and now you're back into probate.
Well, we recommended that they go and they open up a probated estate
I gotcha.
For Gracie King.
Mm-hmm.
And the fellow who was the agent for the heirs, we said, you should be the personal representative for Gracie King. Mm-hmm. And that will give you the authority to sign a deed for her, to deed that property to yourself, if that's the righteous thing to do, if that's correct. If you're the heir who deserves that property, that's the proper way to do it, is to go through probate, not try to quiet the title, which is an adversary process. When you're quieting the title, you are declaring that you're adversary to everyone else on that lawsuit, but he couldn't be, because he was the agent for everybody else in that lawsuit, for all the other heirs.
So from that perspective, what happened after that?
Well, I didn't track it. But
who got the property? So the guy that said he thought he owned it, but he's tried to claim squatters' rights, 10 years, he got kicked out, right?
Well, see, that's the thing. All he had to do...
Oh, the plot thickens.
Yeah, all he had to do was go and file a probate estate with the probate court. And if he was living in the house, he could continue living there and wait the 6 months, go through the process, do the notifications, all the same things that he had done in circuit court, except for now he's doing it in the correct court. And at the end of the 6 months or so, the judge was going to give him the right to deed that property to whoever deserved it. And if he was the heir who deserved it, well, then he could deed it to himself, presuming the judge approved and it was the right thing. But trying to say that you're adversely possessing property, it's very, very difficult in Alabama to use squatters' rights to take title to a piece of property. And you asked me to talk about this law that in Alabama.
This new law that's come up. Yeah, that new law that has got that governor's signature on it. That is going to protect who? Who wins that? Who wins here? Explain the new law, and the owner wins, and explain what this new House bill is going to be.
So I say this because it's a humorous image, but this is true, and I've seen this happen. When a person is squatting in a house right now, they go to the house and they move in, and then the owner calls the police. And I say it's an empty house. I don't mean they moved into somebody's house who was living there. That's a different thing. But if you move into a vacant house, and then the owner comes and they call the police, and the police, the sheriff, whoever, they show up, the police are going to ask the person who's in the house, do you have any right to be here? And all that person up until now had to do was say, yes, I do. And then the sheriff or the deputy or the local law enforcement is going to look at the owner and say, I see you have a deed there, but they claim they have a right to be here. That means that this is a civil matter. And the police don't get involved in civil matters.
And I hated that.
So, right, me too. It was very tough on my owners, because what that meant, my clients, what that meant was that we had to go file what's called an ejectment lawsuit, which is a long process, and you have to go to a different court. You go to circuit court instead of district, and it's expensive, and it's not unfair for that owner to have to do that because some guy walked up and lied and said that he was renting the house. Now it is a crime to do that. It's a crime to go into a house and claim that you have a lease or claim that you have some right to be there when you don't. Before, that was just a lie. It was a civil matter. Now it's a crime. What that means is the the local law enforcement officer can arrest that person on the spot.
On the spot. Oh, wow. I love the fact that they can arrest on the spot, because before, poor officer, you got somebody in there, you're scared to go in yourself, but somebody says, hey, somebody's living in that house, you own it, blah, blah, blah. You go in there, you're like, hey, get out. They're looking at you, ha-ha. You got the mattress there, they got candles there, and they're in there. And don't ever, folks, please, don't ever approach somebody that's squatting in your property. I want to put that out there. Don't do it. Now,
right.
but back then, you call the police and they get there and like, yeah, no, I hate it for you, but I can't do anything. It's a civil matter.
Hey, real quick story, Sheila. This actually happens in Birmingham. A client called and said, hey, the sheriff came and they set the guy out. Everything's cool. I boarded up the front door and I put boards over the windows, and it's all good. We have possession. And I said, hooray, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you are in possession of your house. I'll close out this account. 2 days later, he called me back and he said, you're not going to believe this. The people who were living there unscrewed the boards and they moved back in.
Yeah, that happens to a lot of people. They just unscrew the boards and go back in. And like that's their open door policy or something. It's very disheartening when you've worked hard and you've done this and you're doing these things and people say, I'm just going to go out of town, or I'm just going to do this, or that's my mom's house. We don't want to sell it. I'm in New York, I'm in Michigan, and the other kid is in California, but we don't want to sell it. We're going to come down south once a year, kumbaya, and then they get there and somebody's living in it for a year because they're out of town. And the neighbors don't know what to do because they don't want to get involved. And they know somebody's in there that comes in there every night. But they call the owner in California and the kid in New York and the kid, like, we're not there, but we'll be there. And they find out somebody's in the house. So now the owners have rights.
That's right. So even though in this case I just told you about, what happened was the sheriff came, they set everything out on the sidewalk, they set the person out, they gave possession to the owner boarded it up, and then as soon as the owner left, the guy moved right back in. When we call, and so I met the owner out there, and we called the police. The police showed up, and he said, I can't do anything. I don't have a judge's order.
Right.
This is a civil matter.
Right.
He used to rent here. Well, now that's a criminal matter, because we can show the order to the police officer, and we can say, look, he doesn't have a right to be here anymore. He's been set out. And Sheila, I want to be clear. There's some forms that you have to fill out the day before. You have to post it on the door.
Okay.
You have to fill out other forms, an affidavit. You have to attest that you own the property and that the other guy doesn't have a right to be there and things like that. And we have to have those notarized, and then we take those to the law enforcement agency. So it's a 2-day process. You do all stuff on one day, and then the next day is when the sheriff will go out there. But if they find the guy sitting there and you've already done all your paperwork, you've done it correctly, the law says they can arrest him if he won't walk off. If he walks off, then that's okay. But if he won't do that, the police have the right to arrest him and remove him.
What if he comes back again? He's just going to walk off. We're back to square one, and he knows we've left, and he's going back in there. Do I call the police again, meet the police out there, and they're like, okay, we got you this time? Do I? Because, bottom line is, if we can't catch him, it's like catching criminals today. It's hard to catch these guys. But maybe it'll also be a deterrent that he won't or she won't. It's some of everybody in these houses these days come back.
Well, one of the current laws is that if you tell a person to leave your property and the law enforcement is there and you tell them to leave your property and they leave and then they come back and you call the police and the police come back and find them there, they will arrest them. That's called
criminal trespassing.
So they will. So your scenario is very good. As soon as if we do this and the sheriff says, "Hey, you can either walk off or I'm going to arrest you," and they decide to walk off, if they come right back, the sheriff will arrest them. Now they don't have the right to walk off anymore. Now they're just going to be arrested.
Because you've been given notice, you call the police, I've got this squatter, they've walked off, and if you don't see them walk off, this is one of the questions before we wrap up. You go in the house, you're like, oh my God, somebody's broken the window, there's a mattress, there's candles here, oh my goodness. The person has to be on site?
Well, no, if they're not on site, then you're going to be able to take back possession of the property lawfully because you'll have the policeman there, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention. And this is a nice segue into talking about taking possession back. And I know that we've got to run, but really quickly, there's some folks that give really, really bad advice. Mm-hmm. We call these guys barracks lawyers, Yeah,
that part.
Lawyers.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that know everything, and they know all the rules, and they're wrong usually. There are, and if you go online, you'll see these online gurus that will tell you to employ what they call self-help against squatters. They say that if you go in, if you find that there's somebody there, you go get a gun and you chase them out. Mm-hmm. No, don't do that.
Don't do it.
The
law's on your side, the new law.
Yeah, there's this new guy who's kind of famous because what he did is he just moved in. He moved into a property where people were squatting, okay? He moved into the house and claimed that he took back possession by moving back in. That is a good way to get hurt in your sleep.
Yeah, okay? It is. Don't take the law into your own hands, no.
No, don't.
Do not.
They're popular right now in Jefferson County, Alabama. There's a popular management company that says immediately file eviction. Okay, well, that doesn't work against a squatter. You'll go to court and the judge is just going to dismiss it because if it's a squatter, you can't evict them. You have to eject them.
Right. Ejectment. EJECT, ejectment versus eviction. You have to eject, and that takes a court order, Greg, or no?
That's right. Once the order, it looks a lot like an eviction. But up to that point, the procedures in the law is completely different. So if you have a lease with someone, then and they breach the lease or they overstay their lease or something like that, you can evict. On the other hand, if they didn't have a lease, they had no right to be there, then you must eject them. But all of these ideas that I've seen online, where what they call self-help, just go do it. Just take it back. Take back possession.
Don't do that.
No. Really what you want to do is if you can take possession without breaching the peace, then you can do that. That's great. But you have to be careful about what breaching the peace is. Shelia, you have to be very careful because breaching the peace is a matter of moving their personal property. If you move their personal property, that could be considered a breach of the peace because just by moving it, you might have committed a crime.
Right. I'm going to keep it right there. Last thought, and you may have committed a crime, and what?
Well, here's the last thought. I know this is going to be very disappointing to a lot of folks. This new law where I said you can get people out of your house right away, this probably will not work on your children.
Okay, that's another show for another time. You're not going to be able to get your children out. Greg, we got to get going here. Last question on this new House Bill 182, which strengthens homeowners' rights against squatters who illegally occupy the property. The new law is going to allow you to be able to get the police over there. It's not a civil matter anymore. It is a criminal one. And last question, and you got 20 seconds to answer. If I put a no trespass sign up and they do that, that's still that, right?
Actually, my client stopped by my office, and we've got no trespass signs that cite the new law and say the police are authorized to arrest you if you do this.
I'm coming to get one. I know a bunch of people that need it. You've got a new business selling no trespass signs. Greg, how do we get in touch with you if we've got these issues? How do we get in touch with your lawyers quickly, please?
give us a call, 205 451 4196. I'm going to say that again, 205 451 4196, or send me an email, gregory@stanley-law.com.
If you are in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Coast Guard, all of that, but if you are in the military, the law protects you and your dependents. The APR on payday loans cannot be more than 36%. The lender must give you documents that explain the cost of the loan and your rights. Now, should I get a payday loan or cash advance loan? Even with these protections for service members, payday loans can be very expensive. You have got to be careful about payday loans. Before you get a payday loan, consider these choices. If you are a service member in the military, get financial help from your military aid societies. You have people that will definitely allow you to get help. The Army Emergency Relief Fund is out there for you veterans and all of you folks. 703-428-0000. Also, the Navy and Marine Corps Relief Society. They're out there. 703-696-4904. The Air Force Aid Society can help you with your financial woes and all the things you're going through. And their number is 800-769-8951. Also, the Coast Guard Mutual Assistance is out there for you. 800-881-2462. Be all you can be financially. Ask your employer if you can get an advance on your paycheck. Talk to a credit counselor and getting more time to pay your bills. Where can I get more information about borrowing money? For more information about other ways to borrow money or to get help managing your finances, you military folks, call the Department of Defense at 1-800-342-9647. That's 1-800-342-9647. This line is typically staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or you can go to this website. Go to militaryonesource.com, militaryonesource.com.
All right, Greg Stanley, folks. Attorney Greg Stanley breaking it down on the real estate side. It's good to have you along, folks. I'm Shelia Smoot. Remember, you listening to the Shelia Smoot Show. All the good stuff is right here. Don't be a sucker. Be a consumer. And guess what, folks? Greg Stanley and I and the rest of the crew and all of you, my smart listeners, and then the ones that are learning as they go, we'll see you next week. Have a great, great week.